Good morning, and thank you for joining me this morning for the virtual memorial service for my father, Benjamin Edwin Barber, um, who passed away on August 9th of this year. Thank you all for coming, and I really appreciate it. You're going to see some clips from family and friends and loved ones, and afterwards there will be a Zoom reception, and the link to that is on my Facebook page, or I texted it to everybody. So if you want to join us afterwards for a reception on Zoom, you're more than welcome to. We're going to open today with some words from our pastor, John Savage.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Delma and Ben. I'm so sorry that I could not be with you live this morning, but thank you for letting me be a part of this. Thank you for asking me to join in with all of these people who have beautiful things to say, I'm sure, about Ben. And because I'm not here this morning and because I don't really do well talking off the top of my head, I've written a letter, so I'd like to read this letter for all of you. Dear Delma and Ben, I want to first let you know how sorry I am about Ben's passing. I have no question that the space that he has left in your family is massive and unfillable. We are all praying, not necessarily for the space to be filled, but for your love for him to be ever growing and your memories of him never ending. The first interaction that I ever had with Ben was when Ben Jr. was in the hospital and we weren't sure that he was going to make it. I arrived in time to see Delma talking with the doctor and being told that things were not going well and that she needed to be prepared for the worst. When Ben Sr. arrived, he stood a short distance away from everyone, away from the doctors and away from the family. I went over to talk to him. I introduced myself, told him that I was Delma and Ben's pastor, and that I was happy to finally meet him. I remember that he didn't have a lot to say to me, and while I don't remember exactly what he said, I remember that he treated me very kindly, and I remember that he expressed that he didn't know what he would do if anything happened to his son. He and Delma had already said goodbye to their daughter. He didn't think he could handle losing his son. Now, Ben made it quite clear to me that he was not a praying man. He didn't want me to pray for him in that moment, but I told him that I would be praying for him and for his son. In fact, my final interaction with Ben, when he was in the nursing home after his leg surgery, I told him that I knew he wouldn't want me to pray for him, but that I would wait until later on that night and I would pray for him then. He just smiled at me when I said that. It was the last time I saw him. In the biblical book of Lamentations, the author writes the following: Remember my affliction and my wanderings, the wormwood and the gall. My soul continually remembers it and is bowed down within me. But this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore I will hope in him. Delma and Ben, you have seen your share of afflictions in this life. Certainly, like the writer of the Lamentation, I don't need to remind you of the burdens and difficulties that you have had to carry. But, like the writer of the Lamentation, I am praying that as you continue to grieve for Ben, that you also would call to mind the fact that the love of God is never far away from you. It never ends, and it is new every morning. And that in remembering this, you would have hope. It is now for the two of you to love one another strongly, boldly, and compassionately, as you navigate through life with your memories of Ben, though without his presence. Please remember that there are people, myself included, who love you both and are here for you. I love you both very much. Thanks again.
Thank you, John. Now we will have some words from some of my dad's sister-in-laws and brother-in-law.
Hey, I just wanted to tell Ben that I know he's in a better place. He's not suffering anymore. Doesn't mean we won't miss him. He's been a good brother-in-law.
Well, I'd like to give my condolences again to my sister Delma in the loss of her husband, and to Ben Barber in the loss of his dad. Delma is my sister, and Ben is my nephew. And it's always a hard thing to lose a loved one. And but I know that God is trustworthy, and that you can trust Him, and God will fill the void.
I'm Ben's sister-in-law. Yeah, we used to play cards and go out to dinner every Friday night. Not every Friday night. Sometimes Saturdays. That was fun. He said I always cheated. Played Michigan Rummy, and he called me garbage gut. He was in the nursing home for 7 months, Clipper, which is where I'm at. I got to see him before he passed away. Matter of fact, I got to see him the day before he passed away. May he rest in peace. Loved him.
And Delma and Benji, I know there'll never be any replacing your dad, or you'll never get over missing him, because that doesn't go away. But just know he's always there to look over you and take care of you and love you. And whenever you get sad, just look up at him and know that him and Beverly are up there together watching over you guys. Thank God we've had these last few months to communicate on the iPad and see him and everything. That's meant a lot to James and myself. So take care. We love you, and know that he's in a much, much better place, and we'll all see him again soon.
The Bible says in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 to trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths.
Thank you, guys. Up next, we have my uncle Jimmy, my uncle James Barber, my dad's little brother, with some wonderful memories that gave me a whole new perspective on my father.
So it's been 3 weeks ago today that we said our final goodbyes to Ben. Benji asked me to say a few words and reminisce about my memories of my brother. And unfortunately, this virus has kept us all from being able to get together and have the funeral service that he deserves. So I've spent a lot of time reminiscing about my relationship with Ben over the past 3 weeks. And I've really come to realize what an influence he's had on my life. He was my first friend, my longest friendship. Our dad was in the military, in the Army, and spent a lot of time away from home when we were children. And Ben filled the void that my father couldn't fill. He was my mentor. He taught me how to do most of the things, most of the skills, and most of the things that I learned, that children learn as they're growing up. He taught me how to play all the sports. He was very good in sports, and I wasn't. He taught me how to play baseball. He taught me how to bat and how to squat, so I could have a smaller zone for them to throw the balls to, and I could walk and finally get on base. He taught me how to swim. Taught me how to drive while my father was in the hospital, and he taught me many things, and things that I'll use the rest of my life. Our father died when Ben was 16 and I was 14, I believe, And this is where he really started teaching me how to be, what kind of man he was, and what kind of man he was going to be, because he stepped up and filled the shoes for me and my mother, and my sister had moved out by then, but and was married, but he filled the shoes that my father left behind. Ben was very smart. He's one of the smartest people that I've ever known. He was a world class champion on useless knowledge. If you ever played trivia, you wanted him as your partner, because he knew a lot about everything, and mostly about stuff that you'll never use any other time in your life. Ben taught me that actions are louder than words, and your character is the most important asset that you have. He was a quiet man with a heart as big as the sky, even though he didn't want anybody to know it. He was very funny, very funny. He had a very dry sense of humor, and you had to learn that to know that most of the time we was kidding around, but he was very, very funny. He tried to make people think he didn't care or have feelings, but that was a big facade. His actions told a different story. He had a heart of gold and loved deeply. He had the character of a lion and always did the right and honorable thing. He was always there for anybody that needed him to be there. As a young adult living in Rhode Island by himself, he took in our grandmother Susie, who was somewhat difficult to live with. They moved into a trailer together, and he took care of her until she passed away. When Bob and Jean started having a family, and they needed help raising and watching their four children as both of them worked. He moved into the basement of their house, and he was always there to help them and help the nieces and nephews. He loved Jimmy and Mike and Robin and Lori with all of his heart. Every summer he'd bring them to Florida to visit Linda and I. Uh, he'd drive that 24 hours to get there with four kids in the car, uh, and got there, and we'd take them to Disney World, or we'd take them to the lake and go swimming, and we'd tube down Econfina Creek. One time on one of his trips to Florida, we were tubing down Econfina Creek and tubes, and somebody went over there and poked an alligator, and the alligator slid into the water, and I never knew Ben could walk on water, but I never saw anybody get out of the tube and get out of the creek as fast as he did that day. Another time we were going down Econfina Creek, and he lost his keys, and he was in Florida, 24 hours from home, stranded without keys. And anyhow, we made it to that trial. But he loved his nieces and nephews, and would do anything for them. Ben was a great brother and a great uncle. But when he met Delma, he found true happiness, and he became a great husband and a great father, and he loved his family, and there was absolutely nothing he was going to put before them, and was very, very dedicated to them. He had a lot of tragedy in his life, and when he lost Beverly at 16 years old, that's something that affected him deeply, and he really, really never got over it. There was always underlying sadness in him, and he held that within. He held everything within, and he never really talked about it. But he loved Beverly with all his heart, and that loss was something he carried with him the rest of his life. As I said, Ben was always there when anybody needed a helping hand, and was always there, especially to help our family, just like he helped our grandmother Susie when our mom moved back to Rhode Island and got so she couldn't take care of herself. He was the one that opened up his home. He and Delma opened up their home and brought her to live with them for the remainder of her life. And they loved her dearly and treated her with respect. And and was always there for him. Again, he's taught me many things, but the strength of character of him always stepping up for our family members and people in need certainly was a life lesson I'll never forget. Ben was a workaholic. He loved to work, and anybody gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning and drives an hour to work every single day for the last few years he did that, but to do the same job for 54 years and be committed to that and do it without any griping and complaining, and his loyalty is certainly certainly a strength to him, and something that he taught me was very important. But again, part of his character, and his character was unshakable. So as we look back at the life of Ben and what he's meant to us, please take comfort in knowing that he was a good man. He was faithful. He was faithful to Delma. He was faithful to his children. He was faithful to his job. He was faithful to all his family, his nieces and nephews, his sister, and everybody that he came in contact with. He was faithful to Delma's family and supported them. He had character. It's something you don't find anymore. He was quiet. He didn't want people to know what was going on in his life. He was private, but he loved deeply and had a heart big as gold. He took care of people that were in need. He loved and took care of all of the elderly in our family, and he just a good person, and he would be embarrassed that we're talking to him about him like this, but if you knew him and you met him and you really knew him, you knew how deeply he cared about people. So as we honor him today, please take comfort in knowing that he's in a place that's better for him. He wouldn't have been happy living in a nursing home the rest of his life. He probably wouldn't have been happy not working. And I can tell you right now, he's shared a grand reunion with Beverly and with Robin and with Lori and with our mother and our father and our grandparents, and he's in a better place. Delma, even though he loved to argue with you, there was nothing more important to him than you. He loved you deeply, and I could. Fortunately, over the last 6 months, we got to talk in video chat every Sunday, and I could tell the joy in his eyes when he finally saw that he was going to move into the same room with you. Even though he didn't want to show it, he enjoyed playing cards with you, even though you won most of the games, and he certainly would let me know. He wasn't too proud to let me know you were winning, but he loved you deeply, and you were the light of his life, and just always remember that. And finally, little Ben, you were the greatest joy of his life. He loved you as a baby. He loved you as a child, and he really, really loved you as the man you've become. So, big brother, in wrapping this up, thank you for being my brother, my friend, my mentor. Thank you for showing me what true character is, and always know that I love you and miss you.
Thank you, Uncle Jimmy. I love you too. So you, I learned a lot about my dad in these videos from his siblings, and he was a quiet man who didn't speak a lot about himself. He loved to talk, but he didn't like to tell me a lot about himself. And when he retired in November, they threw a party for him. They made the Christmas party a retirement party at work. So I had to take him back. And he never told me anything about work. And he always made it seem like he was just by himself all the time. But everyone there came up to me and told me all of these wonderful stories about how great he was and how much he helped them. And I wasn't able to go to his work because of the pandemic and get stories from them. But just in the last 6 months, when he was at the nursing home, he made a lasting impact on those people and the people that cared for him, and he cared for them. So my mom got a bunch of them to say a few words about the impact that he made on their lives in a short period of time. So here that is.
Hey Ben, it's been a couple months since you've been gone, and we sure do miss you around here.
So the thing I remember most about Ben was that he was always in the hallway letting me know what was going on in my building. And I do miss that because he was very informative to me and helpful to me.
Hi, I'm really going to miss Ben. I miss his big smile and his sarcastic sense of humor.
He was a great friend, always made me laugh, always made me joke, was witty, smart, always on time, and gone too soon. I miss him.
When it was tough here and I was ready to go home, he would always say, "You're not going home." I'm like, "Ben, how do you know that?" Because I care. And he was right. That's why I stuck it out here.
Like clockwork, he'd roll by my desk, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, you could set your watch by it some nights, and he would go in and he'd make himself a cup of coffee and sit by the desk and just chat for a little while, and I'm gonna miss him so much.
Say I was here the night that Ben went out to the hospital, and it was beautiful how much he loved his family and how important it was to him to, grab onto his wife's hand before he left and, to tell her that he loved her. I'll always remember that.
He lit up the nursing home whenever you came in with his funny jokes, his quick remarks. Altogether, he was, I would say, the life of the party.
Hi, I just wanted to say what a pleasure it was to have met Ben and been able to spend some time with him.
It always put a smile on my face seeing him peek out the bedroom door.
Absolutely.
It was just a great start to my shift every time I saw him sitting there and just giving us that kind of little grin.
At first he was so quiet. When I first met him, he was so quiet. And I used to kind of tease him to see if I could get him to comment back at me. And but I found out he's got a lot of great answers, a lot of great comments, and we miss him here.
It was always fun seeing you in the hallway and laughing at some of the people over here. We miss you, and rest in peace, bud.
And one of the best things that I remember about him is that he kept me in line when it came to picking on Delma. I always picked on Delma before he came down on my end of the building, and man, did he keep me in line after the fact.
Yeah, and he used to sit in the hallway and watch everybody and make people laugh.
Wonderful guy. Miss him.
Very nice to know him.
Yeah, I miss him.
Always willing to joke around with me, especially when I was having a bad night. Probably didn't show it, but he was so good.
And then he said that my name needed to be up on the board for Employee of the Month all the time. He told me that. I do miss him.
So what I remember about Ben is his smile, his routine, and him bickering with his wife.
He always remembered me because when I had days off, he said, "Hey, where you been?"
Very quiet, kept to himself, but also had a very good sense of humor.
Every morning he'd say to me, "Good morning, Mrs. Brown." And he said to me, "Do you know why I say that?" And I said, "No." And he says, "Because of the song, 'You Have a Lovely Daughter, Mrs. Brown.'" He said that he liked Herman's Hermits and I liked Herman's Hermits. So from that point on, we had a very good friendship, and I always look forward to his smiles in the morning.
We only knew Ben for a short time, but we're really happy that we got to meet him. He was a quiet man, but he was often watching over the patients in his company during his time at Apple. Ben was our smiling morning greeter, filling us in on the details of the night before. We will always remember him. We will miss him.
I want to say that Ben
was my neighbor for almost 30 years, lived up the road from me. I think that as a dad, he was awesome because I see how Ben Jr. is. He's such a nice young man.
We will miss his sarcasm and wit and his banter with the residents.
He came so far in the time that he was here. He was an amazing man, and I feel privileged to have been able to meet him.
Thank you, everybody. My dad's older sister, Jean, wrote some of her memories about my dad, her thoughts and feelings, and she didn't feel comfortable necessarily saying them on camera. So here to read my Aunt Jean's words is my best friend, Dave DeAngelis. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. When Ben was a little baby, Mom, Ben, and I went by train to Lancaster, California, to stay with Uncle Clarence, Grandma Susie's brother, while Dad was deployed in the Army during World War II. Dad was going into partnership with him on his ranch in the Mojave Desert when he got out of the Army. I remember one day Uncle Clarence burned off some leaves, but he had to go to his other job as a movie photographer. Ben, who had just begun to walk, wandered into the hot coals and burned his feet. Mom was there by herself with just Ben and I. She sent me to the next-door neighbor's ranch to get help with a bag of rocks to keep away rattlesnakes. The ranches were quite a ways apart. That was the first time Ben did something to his feet. When Dad came home from the war, he decided to stay in the Army, and we moved to Fort Lewis in Washington State. We lived in Fort Knox, Kentucky for a little while. Ben and I got used to get ice shavings from the man who brought ice to keep the refrigerator cold. Back then, it was a special treat. We always considered Bradford, Rhode Island home. Dad was deployed to Salzburg, Austria, and we joined him after our brother Jim was born. We went over on a troop ship, and the weather was pretty rough most of the time. When we were trying to eat dinner on those long tables, our food would slide down in front of the person next to us one way and then back again. Ben liked to sit on the floor on one side of our cabin and slide to the other side when the ship made its way through the rough waters, and then back again to the other side. He thought it was fun. While in Austria, he liked to play cowboy and go sledding. We went on a picnic in the park one day. There was a small bridge with an Austrian boy fishing, so Ben went over to watch. I don't know why, but all of a sudden Ben just walked up to the boy and pushed him in the water. He was probably 4 at the time. Mom was not happy. We moved back to Bradford when Dad's stepfather died. Dad was sent to the Korean War. We moved to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and then to Fort Dix, New Jersey. Dad was deployed to Saudi Arabia. We could have gone with him, but he would have had to stay for 3 years. If we stayed home, he only had to go for a year. We lived in North Stonington for a while. Ben and I used to like swinging on grapevines, pretending we were Tarzan. Every Saturday morning, the boys would go to the movie theater in Westerly to watch cartoons. We lived in Aberdeen, Maryland, and then Havre de Grace, Maryland. Dad was sent to Orleans, France, and we stayed in Bradford until he arranged for a place for us to live, a gatehouse on a chateau on the Loire River. It rained every day that first summer. We then moved to La Ferté-Saint-Aubin. Ben loved sports. He came home from a baseball game one day smiling from ear to ear. He had just won by pitching a no-hitter. Dad was also smiling ear to ear, proud of his son. Another time he came home with his arm in a cast because he broke it playing baseball. He used to throw stones at me through my open window because he didn't like the music I was playing. Another time, Dad, Mom, and I had gone to the base. Ben and Jim and their friends Mike and Marty were home by themselves. When we got home, the boys had cleaned up the house and were just finishing washing the kitchen floor. Now that is not normal. We had a large outbuilding behind the house with several large windows across the front. Each and every one of them was broken. They had thrown a baseball through all of them. I think the first one was an accident, and then they figured if they were going to be in trouble, they might as well have a good reason. Dad was not happy. We came back to the States, and Dad was sent to Aberdeen Proving Grounds to be an instructor. He found out he had cancer and was in Walter Reed Army Hospital for about a year. Bob and I had been married for 2 weeks when Dad died. It was hard on Mom. She had to raise 2 boys by herself. It was hard on the boys, too. It was a critical time in both their lives. Ben went to junior college. He wanted to be a phys ed instructor, but that was never to be. He moved up to Rhode Island and stayed with Bob and I. Bob got him a job at Peacedale Processing, and he stayed there for almost 55 years. Ben lived with us while our kids were growing up. He took me shopping and chauffeured the kids all over the place. He was a great uncle. The kids loved him. He went fishing with Jim. He took Jim, Robin, and Lori to Florida to see our brother Jim and his family one summer. They went to Disney World and had a great time. They also went tube rafting down a river, and of course, we got the phone call because he had lost his car keys in the river. Bob had to send the spare keys he had in case of an emergency down to him so they could get back home. Another time, Ben, Jimmy, Robin, and I went down to Florida for our brother Jim's, now known as James, wedding. We got stopped in North Carolina for going through a red light. The light was green when he started through it and then immediately changed to red. No yellow at all. A cop was right there and pulled us over. Ben had to go find the judge right then in the middle of the night to pay a fine. It was a setup deal and reminded me of an old Danny Thomas show where they first introduced Andy Griffith as sheriff of Maybury. Ben used to play a Meatloaf album over and over again for hours at a time. Pretty good for someone who threw stones at me for playing my music. Ben loved Christmas. He went hog wild trying to get gifts for everyone. I think it was his favorite time of year. One year, Robin bought the family an Atari game for Christmas, and we stayed up all night playing it. He was really proud of the kids when they graduated. You can see it in the picture of him with Robin and Jim. Robin graduated, and Jim got out his graduation gown from when he had graduated, and they took pictures. Ben burned the whole top of his foot with steam at work, and that took a long time to heal. That was the second time he hurt his foot. We fixed up the cellar into an apartment for him. I should say Bob fixed it up. Ben sat in his chair and supervised. He was good at supervising. We always teased him and called him the supervisor. Grandma Susie would come from Arizona and stay with him in the spring, and then go back to Arizona with our mom in the fall. Ben met Delma, and they were married a short time later. We used to get together all the time to play high-low jack and sometimes Michigan rummy or just plain rummy. Delma and Ben usually won. We would go to their house often for cards and dinner. Delma would usually make spaghetti. That was Ben's favorite meal, and no one could make it better than Delma. No one could have been any happier than Ben when Beverly and Ben were born. They were his pride and joy. Ben and Delma usually came to the 4th of July picnic we had most years. When he was finished eating, Ben would always say, "Ready to go, Deli?" It became his signature statement, and he used it everywhere he went. If you said ready to go, everyone knew you were referring to Ben. Ben was a wonderful brother who was always there when you needed him. He loved to tease. He would call me and ask me if I remembered the name of someone in some old TV show we watched over the years. He was very precise and loved trivia. He had a great sense of humor. He taught me how to do Sudoku, much to Bob's regret. Ben was a very loving uncle to my kids. He loved spending time with them. He listened to them and tried to help them when he could. Ben and Delma paid for and Delma made and catered Robin's wedding. He had a large heart. He used to take Lori to brownies when she was little. The worst day of his life was when he lost Beverly. That is something you never get over. His life was filled with ups and downs, but he always had a grin for those he loved and a helping hand to give them in a time of need. This last year was a disaster for most people with the coronavirus and all. For Ben and Delma, it was even worse. Ben retired in November of last year, something that was really hard on him. I think he would have never retired if it hadn't been for his ankle bothering him. It was something that had been a problem for him for a very long time until finally he was using 2 canes to walk and just couldn't do it anymore. That was another problem he had with his feet. Changing your life after going to the same job for 54 years takes a toll on you. After his hospital stay earlier this year, luckily he was sent to the same nursing home where Delma was, so they were able to be together. He seemed happy and was a lot more relaxed than I'd seen him in a long time. Bob and I had hoped to go see him when they lifted the ban on visitation. Bob wanted to bring cards so that maybe the four of us could play like we used to. We will all miss you, Ben. We love you. I guess someone else up there called you. Are you ready to go, Ben? I hope you're happy and at peace, reuniting with Beverly, Mom, and Dad, Lori, Robin, and all the other people who you loved and who love you.
Thanks, man. Thank you, Aunt Jean. I don't really know how to introduce the by the way, this is still live. I just didn't want to be in the wind anymore. I don't really know how to introduce the next speaker. My mom.
I met Ben in 1979, April 21st, at a friend's house. October 5th, we got married, and we had a baby on April 3rd. She was the most beautifulest little girl that we ever had. My husband didn't want to hold her at first, but he held her in his arms. And once he held her in his arms, he fell in love the very first sight. 7 years later, we had a son. We named him Benjamin Francis, after Ben and after Ben's father, Francis. He loved him just so much, and he loved his daughter so much. And then when Beverly was 17, she was killed in a car accident, and that just destroyed us all. Little Ben was 9, and he got spoiled, and he was our best friend over the years. We just love him so much. We're so proud of him. He works hard. He loves to go with his father. He loves to talk to his father. He loved to talk and ask questions about science and social studies and all that. And Ben worked really, really hard to be a father, a husband, worked 10-hour shifts a day, came home and rested, and then I got supper for him. He didn't like to do much. He didn't like to play cards. He didn't want to go anywhere. And then he got sick, retired in November, and he got sick. In January, he had pneumonia and heart congestion. So he got well on that, and they ended up bringing him to the Clipper for rehab. He wasn't able to walk well. His legs were so weak. So, and he was doing good, walking with a walker and meeting people, coming out of his shell. Just enjoyed talking to all the people. We'll always love you, dear, and keep you in our hearts.
Well, the sun is surely sinking down, but the moon is slowly rising. Well, this old world will still be spinning around, oh, and I still love you. So close your eyes, you can close your eyes, it's alright. I don't know no love songs, I can't sing the blues anymore. Oh, but I can sing this song. And you can sing this song when I'm gone. But it won't be long before another day. We're gonna have a good time. No one's gonna take that time away. You can stay as long as you like. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes, it's alright. I don't know no love songs. I can't sing the blues anymore. Oh, but I can sing this song. And you can sing this song when I'm gone. So close your eyes. You can close your eyes, it's alright. I don't know no love songs, and I can't sing the blues anymore. Oh, but I can sing this song. And you can sing this song when I'm gone.
Thank you, Dave and Allie. Before I get to the eulogy, just really quickly, I want to say thank you to everybody. And my Uncle Jimmy and Aunt Jean's, their words really helped me to remember, and so did, by the way, to put into perspective some things. This January, when I got to have a great conversation with my cousin Jim Hinson, and there were so many correlations between my life now and my dad's life, and I just want to say thank you for everybody for reminding me of that, and also thank you to Allie for filling the void that my sister left, and through Braden, allowing my dad to have a little bit of that experience of grandchildren. I really appreciate that. Okay, I didn't even get to the eulogy yet. All right, here we go. I'm good. How do you memorialize 76 years of a life in a few minutes? As a child, we never get to see the full picture of who our parents really are. By the time I was born, my dad was days away from his 43rd birthday. Today would be his 76th. 33 years wasn't enough for me, but no amount of time would have felt like enough. He only got 16 with his dad. I technically got 32. That's twice as many. I'm very, 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 very grateful for that. Every little boy's dad is his hero, and for those of us who are unlucky enough to be the sons of great men, that only grows stronger as you grow older. My dad had a heart condition that he was born with, and by the time I was born, as Aunt Jean told you, he had hurt his feet and legs multiple times. The company which he had worked for 22 years before I was ever even thought of used a glue that he was extremely allergic to, and that gave him a terrible asthma and lung infections. He worked hard every day wearing a gas mask, and he never complained. But he was in pain. From my earliest memories, he was no longer the athlete that my uncle raved about. He didn't have the energy to play as much as he would have liked to, and I didn't have the interest to go fishing or do the other activities that he enjoyed so much with his nieces and nephews 15 years earlier. I loved sports, and so did he. And while, yes, we played for hours, and yes, he spent an endless amount of time teaching me, that was never our bond. My childhood is essentially one 18-year-long memory of him sitting at a kitchen table doing crossword puzzles and quizzing me on random trivia that no 5-year-old should ever know. What's the capital of Mississippi? I don't know, Dad, I'm 6. Yes, you do. Think about it. I don't know. Mississippi City? No. Think. It's also the name of a president. Washington. No. Name as many presidents as you can. Lincoln? There is a Lincoln. That's in Nebraska. Try again. Jefferson. Jefferson City is the capital of Missouri. You're getting closer. By the time I figured out that it was Jackson, which was a president and a town that I had never heard of, I had learned about other presidents, other towns, other states, football teams, baseball players, rivers, the founding of America, and so much more along the way. He would never give me the answer. He'd have me talk and think in circles until I figured it out for myself. He would joke with me, and we would laugh, and then I would get mad, and then we'd laugh some more. My mom didn't drive, which was the biggest blessing of my life. I would ride with my dad to pick her up or take her places, and we would listen to the oldies on the radio, and he'd tell me everything he knew about everything. If it was late at night and I begged to go with him, he'd carry me asleep into the house. When I was about 5 years old, my sister decided she was a grown-up now, at the ripe old age of 12, and that she deserved her own room. The only issue was my grandmother lived with us and we didn't have any more rooms. My parents thought she had a point, though, and I moved to the pull-out couch. My mom sold it to me as the most fun thing I'd ever experienced. I was scared. I was always scared. I made her switch with me, and I moved in with my dad. Being roommates with my best friend is every toddler's dream and every parent's nightmare. I used to watch him sleep. He was a terrible snorer and had undiagnosed sleep apnea for a long time. I would watch him breathe, and I would just wait for the next one. Every night, I would just watch him breathe until I fell asleep out of exhaustion. I never stopped being scared of that. Every time I left him in the hospital or the nursing home, I would watch him breathe 3 times before I left. It was a superstition. I've never met anyone more gentle, more caring, more generous, and loving, who was hell-bent on never letting anyone know about it. My dad was a curmudgeon. He was basically Scrooge if he both had the heart of gold from the end of the story and still said bah humbug to you just to see your reaction. He was like Statler and Waldorf as one person heckling the Muppets from the side, but you knew that he wouldn't want to be anywhere else. My mom was the love of his life, and I know that sounds cliche, and honestly it is. Their favorite pastime was arguing with each other over nothing. He lived to help her, but he didn't want her to just have it easy, and neither did she. Their bickering was like that of an old sitcom. It had a rhythm and a musicality to it almost. He was being funny most of the time and loved teasing her, and she loved teasing him too. No one could make his face turn red faster. This was their love language. As if I had any doubts of the depth of love for my mom, in January of this year she got sick. We didn't know if she would come home again. She had been falling for a while and things weren't looking good. In the 2 weeks that she wasn't with him, he stopped having a reason to be. Just 2 days after a doctor on the phone suggested long-term care for her, his heart was ready to give up. My Uncle Johnny, who helped care for both of my parents for the last 20 years, convinced my dad to let me call an ambulance, and I made him promise that he'd come home again. January was the most difficult time of my life. I think that knowing that she was doing better and hearing me talk about how if he got better, he could go with her, be with her helped him fight. 2 days before Valentine's Day, they were reunited for the first time in 2020, over 6 weeks. I know people talk about weddings being magical, but I've never seen two people happier in my life. Dad did physical therapy and fought his way back to walking. He was ready to come home when COVID hit, and I made him break his promise to me to come home. As much as that decision has and does break my heart, home was never a building. It was just with her. That was where he wanted to be, and the fact that they spent their last weeks and months together playing cards and bickering the way that they love to do, that gives me comfort. I've been constantly worried about two things my entire life. The first is that this day would come. When my sister died, I became inseparable with my parents. The second is being able to live up to this quiet, gentle, generous man and make him proud. I had no reason to worry about that, but I did. He always came to everything that I did. He loved helping out. He helped with tickets, and even though he couldn't care less about theater, he always mentioned something specific to let me know how deeply he watched what I was doing. He always let me make my own decisions, and when I'd fall, and I would fall a lot, he'd help me back to my feet. Never with a hint of disappointment or judgment, but still that burning urge to make him proud persisted. You see, when a man waits more than half of his life to meet his son, when he gives everything he has of his time, his body, his soul to provide for his family, when he's lost his father, his mother, his daughter, and his nieces who were like his own children, when he's had so much loss and heartache and he has been everyone else's broad shoulders, how could I not spend every day worrying about showing him that I was going to be okay? When the pandemic started, I got busy, and I didn't call as much as I wish I did. We got to do a couple recordings that I cherish now more than anything. I got to meet some of the names of the people that he told me about on the radio and the car as a child. Herman's Hermits, The Association, Billy Martin, Denny Lane. One night he FaceTimed me trying to get a minute to talk to me, and I was in the middle of a virtual sound check and thought that he might think that this was cool. Dad, do you remember Terry Sylvester, the Rock and Roll Hall of Famer from the Hollies, I asked. Sure. He wasn't as good as the other guy, my dad replied with his classic Ben Barber wit that you've heard so much about today. Oh, screw him, I wasn't, said Terry Sylvester. My dad laughed. Terry laughed. I introduced my dad to one of the voices on the radio. I told him about how all of these men from his generation asked about how I knew their songs, and I told them stories of you, Dad. I can't sum up 76 years in a few minutes. I learned more about your life from these photos and stories than I ever had. You never talked about yourself. You made everything about us. But today we all finally give you the credit that you deserved. I'll never know if I did enough to make sure that you knew that I would be okay. And no one can tell me otherwise. But I know this. I am proud to be your son. You are the best man, the best son, the best brother, uncle, husband, and father. Thank you for 76 years of selflessness. Thank you for a lifetime of love and laughter and setting an example for all of us to follow. Give Bev and Grandma a hug for me until we meet again. I miss you, and I love you, Dad. I love you, Pop. I love you.
As we close out, let me offer a prayer for all of us. Our Father, we are grateful for the love and the mercy that you show to us through Jesus Christ. We are grateful for this time, even though virtually, that we can gather and remember Benjamin Barber, remember all that he meant to us. And we ask, Father, that during these days and months as they pass, you would help, especially Delma and Ben, to grieve, to stick close together, to heal, to reach out to you for their comfort and for their peace. And for all of us who surround them, we ask that you would help us to be a support and a comfort to them as well. And we do thank you, Father, for the ability to get together. And we thank you that your love never ends and your mercies are new every morning. And we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you to everybody who joined us today. Thank you, everybody who watched and everybody who participated. There will be a Zoom reception now. I'll put the link in the comments during this closing video. Thank you so much. This video is a song that was written by some friends of the family for the loss of their son over 20 years ago, and I think that the words are very appropriate. And please enjoy this slideshow. Thank you so much, and thank you, Dad. I love you all. And please, if you want to join us on Zoom in a few minutes, Dave.
What am I doing here out in the rain? Where do I go from here with all of this pain? I'm searching for honesty as life remains. I should be running free without any I should be running free, never ending. I should be running free without any rain. Where's my life been all of these years? Every day is dark, well, nighttime appears. Still all of my memories, they're covered with tears.